It's time for Hostel Discourse. Here's your host, David Rolfing.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hostel Discourse episode 28. On tonight's show, the theme is survival, so we'll first be discussing a real-life survival story of Levi Strode and the home intruder that he thwarted just a few weeks ago. Then we will discuss the Battle Royale video game genre that has been hitting the video game world by storm over the past year or so with PUBG and Fortnite. So we're going to talk about the effect on the gaming industry and the effect on the shooter genre in general that we think is going to take place in the near future. And then we will debate this debate question. Who is the best partner to take with you into the Hunger Games? First, a quick reminder that everything we talk about in the show is written in the show notes, so you can look down there and skip around throughout the show if you so desire. And also, we stream every recording live on our YouTube channel, The Noob Reactions, so check it out there if you have not already, and you can participate live in the YouTube comments, and we respond there and occasionally read some comments on the show. But first, let me introduce you to the survivor himself, Levi Strode. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be on.
And the regulars are back. My co-hosts, starting with Jacob Hunter out of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Hello.
And Jared Cozart from the Hostel.
Hey, gang.
And last but not least, Joe Kuiper from Oklahoma City.
Hello.
Welcome back, everybody. So, Levi, I would love to hear the story of the man who knocked on your door that fateful night, who got 2 bullets shot past his face. And so you can explain what happened. I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions from your story.
Sure, yeah. So I was in bed with my lovely wife, winding down. She said there was a knock on the door, so I went to see who it was. I put on a pair of pants and my pistol, as I always do, and went to answer the door, looked through the peephole, and he kind of obstructed it by waving. It basically looked like this. And so I cracked it to see what was out there, and he decided to try and come in the house. So I started fighting him at the door, and basically stopped him initially until he presented through the door, kind of around and through the door, a pistol, and put it right in my face. And so I was able to push the gun out of my face, and just kind of hit it out of the way with this hand. And then while I did that, I got mine out pretty instinctually, thankfully, and that's thanks to a lot of training and stuff. And I fired 2 shots, basically just pushing the gun towards his face because I was still fighting him at the door. And the first shot went off right in his face, and luckily didn't strike him. And the second shot was pretty close too, but both of us were falling backwards at that point, essentially. And then I managed to get the door shut when he decided to go elsewhere once he realized it wasn't his grandmother's house, which is, I'm sure, all he was looking for.
Right, yeah, damn.
Of course.
Yeah, but got the door shut, and I actually fell down the stairs behind the landing there, and got back up and worked my way back up and locked it, and then my wife thought I was just shot and killed immediately. She didn't have a lot of high hopes for me once she heard gunfire in her house.
My gosh, yeah.
And so she's just in the bedroom, and I start yelling for her, and she's yelling for me, and it was quite the ordeal. Luckily, we had a new place lined up to move into like the next weekend, and we just ended up expediting that thanks to friends and family who helped us get in there quicker, and that helped us move past the fact that someone tried breaking into our house and pointed a gun at my face. So not much sleep going on there at that other place.
Dude, that is insane. I can't imagine.
It's hard to imagine.
So I'd love to kind of hear what were your like physical symptoms? Did you have like an adrenaline dump after that, or what kind of were you feeling after that happened?
Yeah, so lack of feeling, I think, is the main thing that I noticed. I didn't really register the shots being fired in a house, which is quite a loud thing.
Yeah.
I didn't experience any like tinnitus or other hearing damage or any kind of issues with that or even pain. So that was abnormal, I think. And then I fell down 15 stairs all the way to the bottom and didn't feel a thing. So kind of the lack of feeling, I think, is the majority of what I felt. I had a pretty good recollection immediately. I was trained in law enforcement institute at MU, and they taught us basically what takes place whenever you're in an altercation like that. And essentially, you should expect like 70 so hours of an inability to kind of recall holistically. And I pretty much remembered it immediately. So it was kind of abnormal, but I'm sure every case is the same way. It's just different for everyone.
I know that you, as you mentioned, you carry every day, and I've shot guns with you many times in the past. Have you done any like force on force training or anything like that are supposed to get your senses ready for that adrenaline and, you know, like a actual situation? Or have you not done any kind of like situational recreation training in the past?
I have done, to a limited extent, some force on force training. It's very difficult to actually recreate the sense of potentially dying, and I would almost say it's impossible. Whenever you're doing force on force training, you still kind of have the knowledge that you're not going to be killed, and so I don't. Physically combating someone, the force on force training definitely helped, but the psychological immediate effects and after effects are not really something I don't think you can train for in hindsight. So that was kind of an eye opener.
Was this in a neighborhood where you might expect something like this to happen, or was this a total surprise? I mean, when you were going to the door, were you kind of in the back of your head, is there like, well, you know, this could be, you know, something, or was it just completely out of the blue?
Yeah, so the neighborhood's pretty quiet. It is on the north side of town, which is kind of has a reputation of being kind of sporadically or kind of patchy as far as bad parts of town goes. My particular street where we were is an actually decent little street, and so I think it was just a random deal. They just eeny, meeny, miny, mowed a house and they picked the wrong one. I actually own the building. It's a duplex, and so I have renters on the other side, and so it's not abnormal for them to need something or want something, and so that was my initial thought. And just the way they waved and kind of distracted worked excellently, because it kind of, I didn't necessarily let my guard down because, frankly, my guard's always up. I get out of bed and put a gun on, for crying out loud. But it did kind of confuse, I guess.
Yeah. Crazy.
Personally, I've done research into kind of like concealed carry methods and drawing and firing. And basically what I've seen is they recommend like two-hand pull. Pull up the shirt, pull out the gun, fire. Obviously, you were in a physical struggle before you could have to pull out your gun. So I'm guessing you drew with one hand while the other hand was on the door. Yeah. And was your hand caught in your shirt? Like, what happened there? So,
frankly, I don't recall the gun coming out of my pants. I do train and I practice one-handed draws quite a bit. And that's kind of a perk of it being my hobby also. I do it a lot and enjoy it. So I pretty instinctually kept his gun out of my face and stayed up against the door and was able to get mine out with one hand. And I'm pretty psyched about that, because it is kind of difficult. Even whenever I'm at the range, every once in a while, I'll miss my shirt correctly and, you know, the gun will get snagged or something. Like, things do happen like that. It's not unheard of or even unreasonable to think that could happen. So I'm very grateful that everything went the way it was supposed to and the way I was trained to do it. Luck is a big part of a gunfight. I got no qualms with admitting that.
You say you get out of bed with a gun. Do you mean like that's just 24/7 for you? Or was it the fact that it was a late night thing and there you go?
Got it on right now.
So this is my Glock 19, and I do essentially have it on 24/7. If it's not beside my bed, it's in my pants. Carrying at home is somewhat of a taboo, even for people that carry on the regular. I think mostly just for comfort. People feel both psychologically comfortable, they don't feel threatened in their home, and also just physically comfortable. It changes things as far as your life goes. But more than 0% of home invasions or assaults take place in the home. It's actually significantly higher than that, but more than 0 is enough for me to have made that decision quite a long time ago. And so I carry essentially 24/7.
What do you do on like vacation?
I went to California with my wife last January, and I did feel very, very naked. You just gotta like decide alternative means of protecting yourself, I guess. And I don't like to do that. But it's an uncomfortable state whenever I don't have it.
Obviously, you're in the habit of training firearms and drawing and your aim and everything before this incident. Is there anything that you've like committed to training more, or any lifestyle changes that you're gonna make post-event now?
Yeah, lifestyle changes is one of the difficult ones to make, because I want to be a person who's able to open the door for my neighbor if they need help. And it's hard to do that. And I haven't decided, frankly, if I want to keep doing that. in the back of my head, I want to, because I want to be a good neighbor and I want to help people who need it. But also bad people will knock on your door. That's just a fact of life. As far as training goes, I think I'll continue to prioritize like concealed carry over some other types of like open field battle. Fun training, but not necessarily practical for everyday use. And so I think I'll probably prioritize my concealed carry training more so than I do the other fun types from now on.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a great story to kind of get people aware that home invasions do happen, especially not even a bad street. So yeah. Everyone go out and get your handgun and get your concealed carry, or else you might die.
And plenty of training. Training is... I tried stressing this. I got a couple TV interviews, and like anybody can go purchase a pistol and kind of have a pistol, but it's just like any martial arts. You don't pick up a pair of nunchucks and know how to smack faces with them. You got to actually have training to utilize the tool at its highest potential and capability. So training is what actually saved me and protected me, because I was able to use the gun. I didn't just have it and kind of... Guns are dangerous. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I fell down the stairs and I kept my finger straight so that the gun didn't fire either upward into the floor towards my wife or into any part of my body. If you shoot yourself in the leg, you can die. I mean, so training is really the biggest deal and the biggest thing I want to stress, more so than getting a gun. I recommend everyone get a firearm, and I double recommend everyone learn how to use it.
How many hours do you think it took for you to get to the level that prepared you to get out of this situation in nearly the best case scenario?
Yeah, all the hours. I don't know. I like I said, it is basically a hobby, really a hobby of mine, and I do have I've been blessed in the sense that I've actually received some pretty legit training. I did law enforcement training back in like 2009. I've pursued other kind of private training since then, and so it's kind of relative. The more training you get, the higher level you're going to function. It's just a continuum. It doesn't, there is no enough. There is not really a minimum, but the more you have, the better. And so thankfully, I've had a significant amount.
Awesome. Well, you know what training could help in a real life gunfight? Fortnite. No, not really. But our next topic of discussion, which Levi has played almost twice as much Fortnite as I have hours-wise, which is very impressive because I felt like I've been playing a lot over the last few weeks. But our next topic of discussion is Battle Royale video games, and I just kind of wanted to talk about why they're so popular, why PUBG and Fortnite had 2 or 3 million concurrent users over the past few months, and even the past year or so for PUBG. But I know we're all fans of Fortnite, at least. I've been playing PUBG as well. But I'd love to discuss the Battle Royale genre and why you guys think it's so popular and how you think it's going to affect shooters or video games in general over the next few years.
Have any of you guys seen Accepted, like the old movie where they started college? There's like this goofy guy in there, and he like obsessed with battle royales.
Really?
That's like the one line every time I think of like Fortnite or PUBG whenever it first came out. It's like this guy with a long straggly hair and a sweatband just looking into the distance. Battle Royale. Oh. You had to be there.
That's an old movie too.
I do remember that from that movie.
Yeah. Battle Royale. I was just...
You know what's funny? So our debates about Hunger Games and the Battle Royale video game genre was kind of spawned from the first Hunger Games movie. And the first kind of Battle Royale video game type was a custom game made in Minecraft right after the Hunger Games movie came out, where they kind of recreated like the cornucopia in the middle of the map, and you had one life, and using your Minecraft pickaxes and bows and arrows and stuff, they had a kind of, I don't know if there's 100 people in it, but definitely a Battle Royale style custom game in Minecraft. And then PUBG came out last March, and then Fortnite came out in July, I believe. So really over the past year, those two games have gotten really popular, but it started back in 2012 with Minecraft, which is kind of interesting.
There's some other like rando games in there, like H1Z1, I think, and DayZ that popped up, and they started off, I think, as like zombie survival games. Yeah, and I don't know if that's the gist of what of Fortnite is going to be, but they developed a pretty big following for the short time that they were in development. They kind of died off with these newer games, but
Fortnite does have the player versus computer campaign aspect to it. I mean, I've never done it. You have to pay for it. But it seems like the main thing that they've been doing is this Battle Royale stuff where like the majority of the downloads have been for this Battle Royale. Like 40 million downloads or something like that.
What I found interesting was it's the first video game pretty much ever, besides like Wii Sports or something, that my wife, Danny, has actually gotten into a little bit. She attempted to play along with Gabby, Jared's fiance, so that was really entertaining to try to see them navigate a first-person shooter or third-person shooter. But something about the just concept of the game is really entertaining, even to watch for PUBG or Fortnite. And it just kind of blew my mind that Danny would kind of get into the match and the chance of getting first place out of 100 as much as I did.
Yeah, there's just so much drama that goes into having one life in an arena with 100 other people. It's like, if you see anybody, there's a good chance that, you know, your whole game's going to be over right there.
Maybe for you.
So, yeah, for me, yes, for me. But I agree with Danny. Like, it's fun to watch because it's just so dramatic. It's fun to play too, but I have no problem switching off games with people because I enjoy seeing how they play too.
Jacob, as your standard shooter gamer, have you gotten into Fortnite much? Have you played it on your Mac since you installed it? I haven't seen you online, I don't think.
It's been a while since I played, but I, first of all, am terrible at shooters, any kind. And it's definitely carried over to Fortnite. The first time I saw it played was over Christmas break. My little brother had really gotten into it and was playing it on Xbox and had kind of tried to describe it to me. And it wasn't really until I saw him play that I really understood how fun it could be, which I think that's part of it for me is like, I think if you just sat someone down and had them watch a game, they really wouldn't get it unless you were there in the room with them, feeling the tension, because I feel like the best way to play requires a lot of sitting around or like looting, which I don't think is very exciting. Since seeing people play and picking up the controller and finally getting a hang of like the map and developing kind of my own play style, it's become a lot more fun. And I think that's the best thing Fortnite has to offer is that you can make your own plan completely custom to you and how you want to play. You're not really beholden to really having to learn how to snipe or focus on building and getting resources or anything. You can make your own mix and match gameplay. So that's my take on it so far. I think it might be big maybe for the rest of the summer. I think Fortnite needs to have a really impressive like full release. It has to be at a competitive price point and the crowd still has to stay behind it. It's like Jared, you could explain this. It's like a bank. I mean, there has to be contribution to the game for the value to be there for it. If people start backing out and stop thinking that it's going to be a good community to play in, that's going to totally make it drop out, which happens to games all the time on this kind of scale. But it's a good game, really fun, and almost worth 32 gigs on my hard drive.
This close.
In my mind, it's kind of similar to the horde mode game types that I think Gears of War, I know that's their specific kind of enemy wave game type, but Gears of War had horde mode, Halo had firefight, and then Call of Duty had zombies. And now a lot of different games have those kind of waves of enemies game type that goes on until you die. I don't know when the first Gears of War had horde mode, but I kind of feel like this is the start of Battle Royale mode in most shooters. And when Halo 6 comes out in 2019 or 20, whenever it does, I want to see a Battle Royale mode, and I think we will see it. And I think it'd be really fun to have this type of mode in any different IP, any different shooter. Can you imagine? I guess it's kind of like up to the limitations of their server technology, because it's kind of hard to have 100 players playing in the same game when it's not super laggy. Yeah. And that's probably the limiting factor there in matchmaking, but I hope to see it in shooters in the next few years, and I kind of think we will.
Hey, Big D, let me ask you this, and maybe Jacob and whoever else is technically inclined. Fortnite's had some extended outages due to, I don't even know what, servers being down. I don't even know what that means, okay? Are they doing better than you'd expect for a game like this at this phase, or worse, or about what you'd expect? Because they just had that one day where they were out for like a while, and so I don't know, is that normal, or was that a pretty bad mess up?
So the server outages, they have been out for various reasons. The player base has grown so much in the past couple months, and the past 2 weekends, Fortnite's had 2 million concurrent users. They've had 45 million unique players play the game since it came out in July. So I think they're probably constantly buying new servers, buying new server farms from Amazon or whoever they get their servers from. So those kind of updates are expected, and outages, so that they can increase server capacity so more players can play. But the other side of that has been the patches with new gameplay features that they've been putting out, and those have been really awesome, I think. And Epic Games has been responding to like lots of comments on the subreddit and actually interacting with the community, which is kind of unheard of in video game development. Usually game developers are pretty secluded and not responsive to feedback from fans. And they've been implementing, like with the map update, the Haunted Hills was like a fan idea somebody just posted on Reddit, and they actually put it in the game. So those types of patches have been going on pretty frequently lately, but I like the fan interaction.
Yeah, I wonder, just you're talking about Halo and maybe doing something like that in a bigger game like Halo 6, for example. I don't know. I feel like the pace of the small team-based first-person shooters would be a lot different. I don't know if it would draw the same. I guess it would draw the same crowd, because I feel like everyone is just kind of a game crowd now. There's not really like the genres as much anymore as there used to be, but I just don't know if they could go that route without being accused of betraying their style and their base.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of true. Like Call of Duty, you die pretty quick, so it's very similar to PUBG. Halo, you have a shield, so it takes a little bit longer to die, but it wouldn't be that different pace-wise from Fortnite. I mean, in Fortnite, you get shot once from a distance, you have some chance to recover and put up some walls or whatever. I feel like in Halo, it might work a similar way, obviously without the building, but
I just bank on
it would be interesting.
Times. Like the respawn is just is the biggest difference. Like I die 47 times in a game of Halo because I'm really good. I get so many kills, but I don't know, that just changes the pace a lot. You start over, you have a set of equipment. It'd be a drastically different game, to the point that I don't know if they wouldn't just start from the ground up with a different game. But they did Halo Wars.
I agree with the prediction that we're going to see more Battle Royale formats in AAA titles, but I think they're really not going to compare to what we've seen on Fortnite and PUBG so far, because one of the greatest things about them is they have one great map that everyone gets to become really familiar with, and you see these really different tones all within the map, and you learn these places by name, and you learn the nooks and crannies. And with a big game like a Halo, there's going to be so much more that's more important, with a campaign mode and your deathmatch and building all your different maps to. I was laughing at Joe sneezing. I just think that's a huge undertaking to try to make the battle royale experience happen, because if you just try to throw that same game mode on a map that was designed for team deathmatch, it's really going to suck. Even if you just exploded it to 10 times the scale, I feel like there has to be a lot of attention to a map, which I would not expect a big developer to put into a huge game. It's better off to start from the ground up. So yeah, I second what Levi says in a very long-winded way.
Cool. Well, side note there, PUBG's putting out a second map pretty soon, actually. So
well, screw me.
Yeah. That will be coming out shortly. But yeah, I mean, Halo has some big maps, but they definitely have to dedicate some resources to designing that specific part of multiplayer. All right, let's move on to the debate. The debate is who would be the best person to go with you into the Hunger Games to win. And we narrowed it down to real people only, so we couldn't pick any fictional superheroes or anything. Levi, I know you did pick an older person. Would you say that you want the younger version of this person, or do you want to go with the current age?
I considered that as a relevant factor in my decision making, and I'm pretty confident in the current age of the individual.
I just wanted to check. All right,
we can
saying,
go with
current ages.
It's like saying if you pick a dead person, I think current age is important for the debate.
All right, cool. Well, Jared is the judge, so I can hand it over to you, Jared, and we can get started.
All right, thank you, Big D. Let's do it. I'd like to hear some opening statements. Let's make it about a minute or so each. Give me the big points you want to make, and you can dive into details in a second. But how about let's start with Levi. You are the first-time guest, so you have the first word. Give us your opening statement.
Let's do it. Jackie Chan, an individual well-renowned for his awesomeness. I chose him for a multitude of reasons. Some include his size, some include his physical capabilities, even at his older age that he's at right now. I believe he's 62 years old. I think it's like currency, though. There's kind of like a relativeness between Chinese and American. I think that's like 48 in American years because they live forever. But he's just a practiced martial artist and a serious martial artist, and not a Zen martial art, a kung fu, like a brute force fighting style. He's practiced with primitive weapons, which you'd be have to utilize in the Hunger Games. You don't have modern technology for the most part, if it's the same as the movies. Also, physically compatible. He'd be physically compatible with me and my capabilities as an individual. So I think Jackie Chan, even in his older age, has proven himself to be a hardcore dude. And with more in-depth conversation, I think I can convince the world of this.
Okay, Joseph, who is your pick?
When you're picking a person to go with you, you need a few things. You need someone who is a great survivalist, because a lot of the time you're basically going to be in the wilderness trying to survive. You also need someone who's capable of killing another person, someone with training. And third, you need someone who hopefully is well liked enough that you can get some sponsors, assuming that we're including that in this whole debate. And so the best person for that is my boy Bear Grylls, the old man versus wild. Bear Grylls would make a great teammate, because like I said, he is obviously an amazing survivalist, and he was part of the British Special Air Service. So he was in the military in a Special Forces unit. And, of course, he is extremely well known and could get a ton of sponsors.
Let's see, Big D.
My choice to go into the Hunger Games with me is Tim Kennedy. He is one of the few fighters in the UFC to simultaneously serve in the United States Army while he was a professional fighter. He competed in Strikeforce, WEC, UFC. He was a top UFC middleweight contender. He retired last year from the UFC, but then re-enlisted in the U.S. Army. He was in an elite special forces unit and was a Green Beret. He won several hand-to-hand combat competitions in the Army, as well as took sniper training, et cetera, et cetera. I can go over more details, but I think that his military experience and his actual combat experience and ability to kill people is very valuable in this debate, with weapons as well as his hand-to-hand combat experience in mixed martial arts.
Okay, good pick. What was his name?
Tim Kennedy.
Kennedy. Okay, I wrote down Tim Candy. It's like, that doesn't sound right.
Way less cool.
Also, this is a funny story. I went to Panda Express today for lunch. The woman at the drive-thru asked me if I wanted any soy sauce or chili sauce. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd like the silly sauce. All right, Jacob, what you got?
Thank you, Judge, for that great story.
Great anecdote.
So, the only thing we have to model a true Hunger Games experience is Fortnite and PUBG. Consider the strategy you take to rank the highest, to give yourself the best odds at winning in Fortnite or PUBG. It's basically the best defense is the best offense you can have. That is, to use the interpretation of that saying that I originally understood. If you focus on defense, it will function as your offense, your forward to the goal. This is why I picked John Plant. He is the creator and curator of the famous YouTube channel Primitive Technology. He's an Australian that specializes in wilderness survivalism and has a plethora of videos showcasing his skill set of building and using weapons, tools, and shelter constructed only from surrounding nature. Here's why he's the best person you want on your team. It's the team dynamic. All of his skills are phenomenal, and they are only accented by the base skills a person has. He just tells you what to do, and the fact that there are two more hands working on what he has to offer, his skills are magnified to a large degree. Plus, if one of us were to die, all of the benefits we were to reap from our team work would still be usable afterwards, as opposed to someone who I'm just relying on their knowledge and their tactics. This is just a partner that will help build and give materials that can still be used post-mortem.
Okay, great. Those are some good picks, gang. Now, let's go into a rebuttal phase / expansion on your points. So the floor is now open to you three. You may dissect each other's arguments or provide more evidence for your own. I leave it up to you.
I think I want to start off by picking on the choice I think is the worst of the four, which is John Plant, primitive technologist. Listen, Jacob, you're talking about Fortnite and PUBG. We're talking about the Hunger Games here, the movies that we saw. In those movies, the people who built fires, the people who drew attention to themselves by actually building a camp, they got murdered. The girl who built a fire in the first Hunger Games movie, she got chopped up by Kano. I think that was his name, because she drew attention to themselves. If you're relying on his only skills, which are building little campsites from his YouTube videos, that you're going to die because you're going to draw too much attention to yourself.
All right. The language you're using is belittling, first of all. Second of all, you assume my stupidity, which I won't fault you for. Many have and have been correct, but at least John and my combined instincts and general common sense will advise against building a camp in a way that is bringing attention to ourselves. Okay, there's more things that we could do to further our survival than building a distracting camp that would just bring attention to ourselves. So I refute that notion entirely based on what you've brought up. For your point to make sense, we would have to build things that we wouldn't in this situation.
I like David's point, and it's a good point, but I would like to bring up a better point against yours, is that you're not only fighting against the however other many 24 other people in the arena, you're also fighting against the game makers. And at the end of the day, if you build a fort, you know, based on the movies, that those game makers are going to mess with that fort. They'll light some fire. They'll send in bees. And they're going to force you to fight somebody for the entertainment value alone.
Dynamic environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That said, there's nothing I can do about that. And I'm not sure that picking a fighter protects you from the game makers in any better way. I mean, if we're assuming that there's going to be malevolent forces that are acting against your strengths at all times, that can just be applied to any argument that's made. So I also refute that counter argument.
It's true, but why not combine the survivalist mentality with the fighter and have my boy Bear Grylls as your teammate?
Because he's a lame survivalist.
He's a good survivalist.
Excellent point.
I think that was sarcastic and for good reason. I've watched some of his show, and here's the thing: I don't actually know the true extent of Bear Grylls' survival abilities. But first of all, I know that he's always got a camera crew with him at all times. He's never in any real danger, nor is he isolated. He also really makes like bad huts. He doesn't seem that good at building shelter. That might be for
bad huts.
Yeah,
seems very subjective.
There's always rain falling through and everything. Not with my guy. He builds quality structures. It might just be for the drama of his TV show. I'll concede this. I've never seen proof of him building and performing the survivalist feats that John Plant has. I invite you to respond to that.
Look, I'm not going to take your assessment of Bear Grylls' expertise by saying that you as a lowly city folk can say, oh, his huts are poor. And besides that, we're not going to win this game by building huts. We're going to build this game by surviving off the land, knowing what to eat, which I think he does. And at the end of the day, if it comes down to fighting, at least he has special services behind him.
So I'd like to attack some of the other burly men in this equation, if that's possible.
I look forward to hearing
it. Do not attack my burly man.
Burly Tim.
So you know who the burly men are, at least. Not the hut builder. So soldiers were the other choices. Modern soldiers, I'll point out for the sake of argument, because I think that's a variable that should be considered in the argument. Those, who are they? Bear Grylls, I think, is a verifiable BA dude. He's a soldier, a modern soldier, and a pretty elite group of individuals who killed people, frankly. And Kennedy is the same. He's an Army Special Forces soldier, I think, and also a UFC fighter. The fact of the matter is, though, they've developed their skills around modern technique and modern weaponry, which is not going to be prioritized in the Hunger Games. Jackie Chan is a kung fu master who's developed a skill set to utilize at the highest level tools of ancient fighting that you're going to see in the Hunger Games. Archery, for example, swords, spears, the tip-top of primitive weaponry. And I think that that's going to give an advantage to my 62-year-old friend from China in regards to these modern soldiers. And, of course, stabbing the guy in the hut.
Yeah. Hut can't protect against stabs.
Those are some good points, Levi. I would love to go over some more details on Tim Kennedy as well. So he actually got his criminal justice degree undergrad from Columbia, Missouri. So shout out to Columbia, Levi. Some true survivors coming out of there, if you know what I mean.
Intriguing.
So he completed Ranger School. He was in the 7th Special Forces group. He went through Green Beret training, Ranger School, sniper training. He was a sniper instructor. But I want to specifically focus on Ranger School for a second here, because a big aspect of the Hunger Games is not knowing what terrain you're going to be in. In the movies, they mention people being in more of a desert environment and being in a freezing Arctic environment. In Ranger School, which Tim Kennedy completed successfully, they go through 3 different phases. They go through a mountain phase, where they learn mountaineering, conditioning, and techniques. They go through a swamp phase in Florida, when they learn how to deal with that environment. And they go through a desert phase in a different state. Actually, in the deserts of the Middle East, sorry. So I think that this training, which is just a snippet of all the different military, physical, and technique training that Tim Kennedy has completed, just speaks to the preparedness that he has for any situation to survive, as well as eliminate the enemy that needs to be eliminated. He won that hand-to-hand combat army tournament 3 years in a row, so he doesn't need modern weapons like guns to survive. I'm sure he could do some damage with a sword and would be very skilled at it, considering how good he is with just his hands. So I believe that Tim Kennedy would defeat Jackie Chan in a fist fight.
Rebuttal, if I may. Jackie Chan has literally hardened parts of his body through traditional body hardening practices, with which modern military personnel in the United States Armed Forces, even at the highest level, do not do. That's not a practice. And whenever you hear about these environmental challenges that our United States military overcomes in their training, for the most part, you see the Shaolin monks and even Jackie Chan, in his dedication to those things, has trained himself psychologically and physically to overcome detrimental environments in the same way, except he doesn't have the U.S. federal government buying him Gore-Tex before they send him out there. The United States Army is not necessarily sent into a swamp without waders, is all I'm saying. So there's a difference in training. Both are high level, both achieve the goal, both are intended to create a soldier that performs highly, but one is keeping in mind the modern technology, modern advanced capabilities of the United States military. The other is just raw, angry, bones literally harder than normal bones manpower. Jackie Chan.
I love Jackie Chan as much as the next guy, but at the end of the day, you're essentially bringing along a 62-year-old actor who I could no doubt kick the crap out of me. and probably, I mean, potentially other people in this group, especially whatever the plant guy's name is. But
his name is Plant. You got it.
His name is Plant. Yeah,
Plant Man.
But at the end of the day, I mean, he just lacks the hardened survival mentality. And I mean, like, he's got to know, like, what plants to eat, where to make camp, that kind of stuff. And I think that those kind of things would play in more to the Hunger Games than potentially just hand-to-hand fighting everybody. Especially because in the Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen only kills one person in the entire thing and basically just has to outlast everybody. And I think that is how you win, but you also need the physical aspect as well.
I think that Joe makes a good point, which also relates to Tim Kennedy. And I think Tim Kennedy and Bear Grylls are kind of similar choices, except Tim Kennedy, I think, has a lot more actual combat experience than Bear Grylls does. He was in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, deployed multiple times. He received the multiple awards, including the Army's Bronze Star Medal and V device, which is awarded for valor under fire. So he's been in real firefights. I know that Tim Kennedy would be calm in a life-threatening situation because he's faced it so many times before. And I think that Jackie Chan has good martial arts skills, and maybe he's hardened some of his bones, but I don't think that he's really faced any life-threatening situations, and I feel like Tim Kennedy is just a lot more qualified to actually kill people in the Hunger Games than he is.
For one, Jackie Chan has verifiably faced life-threatening situations in his career. He's a stuntman and has been his entire movie career, actually starting off probably doing stunts before being on film. He's broken a significant amount of his body throughout the years and has filmed the remainder of his movies more than one time with pieces of him that are literally broken. So to say that he's not capable of surviving, I think is an incorrect statement. However, I think there's a mentality that a lot of people don't get that comes along with traditional. He's not like a Bruce Lee who yells on screen and does kung fu and stuff and wears yellow jumpsuits. He's like a traditionalist kung fu practitioner before a movie star, and still is. His hands look like he could like strangle a rhinoceros, like with just the muscularity of them and things. He's not just some actor. He is an actor, but he's a traditional raw power martial artist before. And to your point about the firefight, it's exactly what it is, a firefight. Once they break out of the dome and have to fight the Capitol, he would be very, very helpful. But until that point, he's more susceptible to being taken advantage of physically because he's not capable of defending himself with primitive weapons to the extent that someone who practices extensively with swords, sticks, literally, spears, throwing weapons, and the sorts.
Very good points, everybody. Very good points. I have some questions that I'd like some clearing up on. So, Levi, while you have the floor, we'll just stick with you. Let me make sure I hear what you're saying about his survival skills. How important do you think survival skills, because I'm hearing a lot of stress about his hand-to-hand combat with primitive weapons and less stress than these other guys on building forts or fires or knowing what plants to eat or whatever. So clarify that position for me.
Yeah, so you have to kind of look into traditional kung fu and everything that encompasses. Survivability is actually incorporated into the practice. So learning medicinal remedies for ailments, learning how to heal, practicing healthy habits that allow you to heal faster and that sort of thing. So survivability is definitely an aspect of traditional kung fu and all the types that he's done. But basically, I prioritize, I think, combat more so than I do, and ruggedness more so than I do survivability, because of the dynamic aspect of the Hunger Games. It's a constantly moving, due to the dynamic environment controlled by those trying to create a show, essentially and literally. So you're going to encounter people more so than just hunkering down. It's not like you find the center of the circle in PUBG or in Fortnite and and just sit in a basement until somebody finds you and kills you. It's the overseers are trying to create drama, and to do so, they force you out of whatever static encampment you might come across or any kind of recovery phase that you might be in. So you need to continue to move, you need to continue to fight, and you need to be very durable, which he's definitely proven to be throughout the years.
Okay, great. Thank you. let's move down the sheet to Joe. Here are my thoughts right now on Bear Grylls and Tim Kennedy specifically, okay? My thoughts are, well, they're very similar, right? They're both kind of special ops people, so they presumably have similar survival skills. Tim Kennedy is presumably a better fighter than Bear Grylls because he has the same military training plus professional sport fighting training in the UFC. So you just got to convince me that, like, what does Bear Grylls have on Tim Kennedy?
Bear Grylls is by far the better survivalist and outdoorsman. I know that, like, obviously Green Berets go through a lot of that stuff, but like what Levi was saying, they do it with Gore-Tex and with sniper rifles and assault rifles and all that kind of stuff. These, like, very, they're cultivated to have all the equipment with them, which they would not have in the Hunger Games. Whereas Bear Grylls is more, he's out there, he's on his own, he makes it from scratch. And I think an important thing about that are things like general knowledge of what to eat and what not to eat in the Hunger Games. One of the girls is killed because she eats nightlock, which is something that Bear Grylls would never let happen because he understands what to eat and what not to eat. Tracker jackers are used to kill 2 other characters in the Hunger Games, which is a tactic that Bear Grylls would be better at understanding than someone who's just been in the military their whole life. And also when it comes to things like trapping food, and in this case, trapping human beings, I think using traps and setting up booby traps, things like that, would be very instrumental in helping us survive.
All right. Very good, Joe. Big D, let's see. I'll give you a chance to kind of respond to that while also answering Levi's criticism, not just of Tim Kennedy, but kind of in general, of this idea of his training is too modern. He's not. He is going out with all the stuff that the U.S. Army gives him, and he, maybe he can't do it without that, or he can't do it as fundamentally as Jackie Chan. So respond to those 2 criticisms.
Listen, Tim Kennedy has all of the same training that Bear Grylls has times 5. He got all the same survival training in the Green Berets and the Rangers and sniper school. He was a sniper instructor in the Army as well. Snipers, their job is to scout, to sit in one place for a really long time, to survive, and to take out a target. He just didn't have a TV show where he showed the world that he could survive in the wild, but it's pretty apparent that he can survive in the wild from all the different training that he had in the military. As far as not having as much experience with traditional weapons, I mean, he's trained mixed martial arts and had professional MMA fights since he was, I think, 14. I read on his Wikipedia page. His hand-to-hand combat skills are top 1% in the world. He was top 5 middleweights in the UFC. He knocked out guys like Yoel Romero and amazing fighters in the UFC. He beat Michael Bisping, who was the middleweight champion just this past year. I just think that Tim Kennedy has everything it takes. And let's be honest, the careers in the Hunger Games from Districts 1 and 2, the careers, that's what they're called, they win the majority of the Hunger Games. The 2 movies that we saw were flukes. The second movie, they break out of the arena just from outside help. In the first movie, Katniss and Peeta get super lucky. But in every other Hunger Games, most of the time, the careers from Districts 1 or 2 won. And what Tim Kennedy is a career. He is trained to kill people, and I think he's definitely the best partner to pick for this job.
Okay, great. Jacob, my question to you is similar but reversed to my question for Levi. And that is, your guy seems, much, much more focused. And, you said this on survival, defense for offense, but with no emphasis really on combat skills or what happens when you run into somebody. How does that factor into your equation?
I see it as kind of a function of how much you want to risk. I think there is a lot of stability when you pick a soldier as your partner, but at the same time, I think that's preparing you for a violent confrontation in which a bad turn of luck can take all of your benefits completely out of the equation. And so I decided to pick someone where there's no real luck, save the game makers, which everyone would be dealing with equally. You just got to take the game into your own hands and don't let yourself fall into a situation where something trivial becomes something completely massive, say your opponent randomly just has a better weapon than you. In a certain matchup, your years of training can really not mean that much. If someone comes up with a bow and tons of arrows and you have a sword, there's not a whole lot you can do to at least prepare against an ambush or something like that. What I'm offering is the way to take the game into your own hands, take as much luck out of the equation as you can, and focus on the idea of the game, which is survival. This does not take any offensive abilities, or doesn't take them completely out of the equation. With my partner, there's still the skills for building bows and arrows and slings and traps out of the surrounding nature, but that's just the way that I've chosen to look at this, because it's the way that I've seen survival simulators to be beaten almost, or at least people that are the best at them tend to use a severe emphasis on survival as opposed to confrontation.
What survival simulators are you talking about?
The subject of our podcast today is PUBG and Fortnite. These are what we're...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like, Jared, can I give you a quote from John Plant himself?
You may, and let's try and include this, work this into your final statement.
Okay, I'll reiterate for my final statement. John Plant is definitely the worst option out of these four. Quote from him: "When I'm not in the wild, I spend most of my time on the internet researching primitive technology, among other subjects," Plant said. "I don't live in the wild. This is just an interest, though I camp out in the huts sometimes." Basically, he's a YouTuber. He makes really awesome videos. I love his channel. I look forward to watching every single video he puts out there. But from what we see in the movies, I mean, if you build an elaborate, awesome shelter with clay pots and a sweet axe and a thatched roof with thatched shingles and whatever, his videos are cool. He's just not the right pick for this argument. But the right pick is Tim Kennedy. As I mentioned before, he's like the careers in the Hunger Games. He's been trained from a young age to kill people, to survive in the wilderness with his Green Beret special ops sniper training. And he can also remain calm and assess the situation and be strategic while being pumped with adrenaline and keeping that under control. On top of his UFC career, which should not be overlooked, he was 18-6 in professional MMA, and he's just an overall badass guy. He also started Sheepdog Response, which is a self-defense training school. They just opened up a location in Tulsa, actually. So shout out to Sheepdog Tulsa.
Hey-o.
So, yeah, Tim Kennedy. That's my final statement.
Okay, good stuff, Big D. Jacob, give us a final thoughts.
Sure. Since I think I got a little bit of attention in that last one, I'll say that the idea that that when I bring John Plant into this game, he is going to be focused on building clay pots and thatched shingles and putting a lot of effort into aesthetic things. This is an example of a thing called a straw man argument. It's arguing against things that I am not arguing I would do. And it is a takedown of an argument that does not exist. If anything, what David just said shows that who I've chosen is obsessed with survivalism. When he is not working on surviving, he is studying and researching primitive technologies and how to survive when there's no resources that you can gather on, when there's nothing left that you can turn to. Building basically your baseline abilities, taking them to the highest level possible. I think that's a huge factor of the Hunger Games. You're going on what you have when there's nothing else that you can draw on. And so I said a lot of what I wanted to say in my closing statement. In my previous statement, basically saying when you're choosing your partner, you're basically showing how you're planning to play the game. You put your eggs in certain baskets, your chips on certain squares on the roulette table or whatever, however you want to see it. If you pick a soldier, you're expecting and planning for a fight. And you don't have to do that to win the Hunger Games. At least you don't have to be a soldier in a fight to win the Hunger Games. It's not unprecedented, and it's common in the Hunger Games for people that you wouldn't expect to win them if you look through the history of the games. So who I've chosen is the one that's going to give you the most protection when there is nothing else that you can draw on. The arguments that have been thrown against me, I think, are a lot of straw men, a lot of ones that are just kind of knocking down things that aren't really reasonable for me and my potential partner to do in the Hunger Games. So the survivalist, John Plant, creator of Primitive Technology YouTube channel, is he's your best option. And yeah, I'll answer any questions if you have, Jared.
My questions have been answered. Your response has been heard. Joe, tell me about Bear Grylls.
What do you want to know? No. So Bear Grylls, look, at the end of the day, Bear Grylls is a better survivalist than Tim Kennedy. I know David said he's 5 times better than Bear Grylls, but I disagree because Tim Kennedy has spent the last however many years in the MMA and with the military, which are obviously both great fighting, assisting fighting, but they're not survivalists. Whereas Bear Grylls, since he left the military, has literally only focused on survival, and he was clearly be the more knowledgeable person in the situation on how to survive. And then there's one other aspect that I'd like to bring up is that there's 2 people in this fight, and we're obviously going to be with them. And at the end of the day, assuming that we all go into this equally capable, Bear Grylls is a great teacher. And not only that, but he's literally honed his skills in instructing other people how to do things. And therefore, not only is it Bear Grylls in this fight, but it's Bear Grylls and his protege, me, who he's going to teach how to do many different things in terms of survival. So it's 2-on-1, baby.
Are you telling me that you're going to be Bear Grylls?
I'm telling you that Bear Grylls is going to be a better help to me than Tim Kennedy would help other people or Jackie Chan would help other people.
I understand. All right. Very good. All right, Levi, bring us home.
As far as helping other people, Chan Kong Sang is his actual name. Jackie Chan is worth $350 million net worth, which means his family has some cash money, which also means that you're going to be sponsored in the Hunger Games. So speaking of help, we're going to have medicine and whatever other loot drops that you're allowed to get in the Hunger Games from outside observers. Secondly, you're right.
Maybe some slurp juice.
Maybe some slurps. Secondly, compatibility. I like what Joseph said about compatibility. You have to function well with your partner. A lot of these special operators and BA soldiers and plant weavers or whatever are definitely rad dudes, definitely beasts when it comes to fighting other people. But inevitably in a fight, you have to function as a team. You have to be able to take care of your partner if, in fact, they take an arrow to the knee or something during the Hunger Games. Jackie Chan happens to weigh 143 pounds, which I can get over my shoulder as a matter of fact. He's 5'7". I can hide him under a bush if I need to while we either recover or wait for our loot package from his sponsors. So the gist of the matter is, together, as a matter of fact, I think we would be better off than just having a brute force capable United States Special Forces operator. And just his mastery of his legitimate mastery that he portrays on film, but isn't dependent on his film career, just gives us a super advantage when it comes to primitive weaponry that we're going to encounter. We don't have sniper rifles, we don't have Gore-Tex, we don't have camera crew behind us every minute of the day and sleep in hotels. I see you. But I think overall, just the combined package and the functionality with myself, not just as a solo person who I follow around and sleep in their hut. Jackie Chan is the ticket.
The ticket. Done. That's the ticket.
Done.
Man, I can get behind that saying, because that's what my grandma used to say. She'd say, "That's the ticket." All right, Grandma, that's good.
Sports Radio 1310.
I don't know what you just said.
Sports Radio, it's the ticket.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the ticket. Right. Okay.
I'm sure Jackie Chan would say that as well, since he's as old as my grandpa.
62, bro. I'm going to need some evidence of your grandfather's age.
All right. Hey, great stuff, gang. These are some good arguments, some nice choices. I would feel very safe with any of them in the Hunger Games. And yet, my mind is made up already.
Wow.
And so, as usual, we'll start with last place. And, Joe, you're not last.
No.
You're not last. Jacob, you're last.
Oh, no.
Jeez. If I would have lost to John Plant, I think I would have quit this podcast.
Oh, Jacob, you're last place. Hey, let me say this. It's hard to judge this thing because, we want to base it on how good is the argument, And it
was. You can right. It was. I see what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So John Plant is last. I just can't get over, like, I like your idea, but I wasn't convinced that he was a better survivalist than like some of the others, and he lacks. He's just completely deficient comparatively in combat. So you don't
know that. But
no, I don't. I really don't know that.
Well, we fought the good fight, and I'll go to sleep easy, knowing that I put the best foot forward. Yeah,
that's what I like about you. Okay, next, third place. It's not a joke this time. Joe, third place. He shakes his head in anger and disbelief. Let me say this, Joe. The best point you had, the very best point you had, which I appreciated and did not go I mean, maybe you feel like it went unrewarded because now you're in third place. But the fact that, he can pick out the right food to eat, I thought that was an excellent point. People die eating the wrong food. So I give you great props for that. But ultimately, it just wasn't enough.
Wasn't enough what?
It wasn't enough. Let me put it this way. Like, if I were going to take Bear Grylls is just knockoff Tim Kennedy.
That's not even true. Tim Kennedy has no special survival skills.
Bro, he was in the
military.
He's in the special forces in the U.S. Army.
That does not equate to knowing what to eat.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't equate to knowing what to eat. But I'm saying that the net of all things added up and subtracted, at the very least, I take Tim as the better choice over Bear. And Big D had some solid points. So that leaves Big D and Levi, Bear Grylls, and Jackie Chan. This is exciting. Who's it going to be? Who's the winner going to be? I can feel it building. This is almost as tense as top 2 in Fortnite.
No way. It's
Hearts pounding. Hearts pounding. No, I'm going to die soon. Got it.
The winner is our first-time guest, Levi.
Wow.
And Jackie Chan.
The perfect record.
One's a batting 1,000, baby.
Wow. He's undefeated. Big D, man, look, I'm not knocking your argument in any way. You had a great pick. You had great arguments. Ultimately, it came down to this. Well, I think Levi had awesome points, and he had awesome kind of rebuttals. So, one of the big pluses of Tim Kennedy is how trained he is as a fighter. He's a sniper instructor and all this stuff. But Levi's right. You don't get snipers in the Hunger Games. You're playing with bows and arrows and swords and stuff. And so I really like that point. Jackie Chan has the edge with the primitive weapons.
With edges.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the edge with the edges. Levi answered my questions about his survival skills and are they sufficient? Yes, it's part of Kung Fu to learn how to heal the body and even survive. Plus, sponsors seemed like from the beginning they were in play. So the late push for sponsors from Jackie Chan made some sense. And the other part is like I didn't hear anybody tear down Jackie Chan very well at all. So anyway, that's what it comes down to. Levi batting 1,000.
Woo! Congrats.
Yeah, I wonder how good of a case you could make for Jeff Bezos. Just on wealth alone. That's the one true factor you could count on. There's ifs and or buts on the game makers and what's going to happen in a fight, but money's going to be there.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
It's about that total package, though.
I admit defeat there, Levi. I didn't really think of the traditional weapon set that they showed in the Hunger Games compared to modern weapons, as well as that last-minute jab for the sponsors. You definitely pushed it over.
I banked on that. I think Joe brought that up earlier first.
Yeah,
but I remember seeing his net worth, and he's got some backing. That's a fact.
He's got some money.
Tim Kennedy did have a show called Hunting Hitler, where they hunted evidence of Nazis escaping to South America.
I meant to bring that up in my argument and be like, this dude believes that Hitler's still alive, so therefore he's a nut job and should not win.
Joe, that could have catapulted you to second place.
Ooh,
for sure.
I might have made second.
Could have done it. Interestingly enough, I feel like David and I got in a conversation the other day about Bear Grylls, and I was actually a support. Was that you and Caleb, or was that somebody else?
Yeah, I think that was me.
I was talking about Bear Grylls the other day, and I said he was a certified awesome actual survivor and BA soldier. So I stuck up for him the other day.
Yeah, and I mentioned that there's a YouTube clip of him filming a wide shot from the show, and they're filming next to a highway, and it's supposed to be like in the middle of nowhere.
What sold me on him was when he like put his face in a beehive and got stung all over, and his face swelled up. Like, you don't fake that. That's not makeup. So he's got to be legit to some extent.
He also eats anything, so at least we'd be full of nutrients.
Drinks his own pee at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
It's true. True.
Joe, you could swap pee. You could drink his pee, and he could drink yours.
That is teamwork.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I think we'll end on that teamwork example. Levi, you're the first guest to win a solo debate on their first episode, so congratulations again.
Oh, hot dang. Thanks, team.
And thank you for coming on the show as well.
You bet. I had a blast.
Yeah.
And I always enjoy watching the show. I try to keep up with it, either on SoundCloud or the YouTubes. But
you were a fantastic guest.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out a couple comments from the YouTube live stream, which I'll just use this as a reminder. You can join us on our recording sessions on YouTube live. Michael Hare said it's pretty straightforward. Green Beret plus UFC greater than British Special Ops greater than dude making YouTube videos about wilderness building greater than ancient black belt. So.
Well,
at least I got second in that one.
Out. Yeah.
Didn't get the popular vote.
Yeah.
But who needs the popular vote, you know?
Not me.
That's right. You got the I am the Electoral College.
Electoral College right here coming in clutch.
Next week, we'll be back just 1 week later for a post-Super Bowl episode, so stay tuned for that. And as always, try to leave us a review on iTunes if you have not, 5-star rating, plus your comments if you enjoyed this week's show. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Have a great time.
So long.
Thanks for listening to Hostel Discourse. Subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. And check out our other social media accounts linked in the show notes. Join us next time for more inexhaustible debate over the most questionable of topics.